A telescope on Earth just detected something impossible happening, 628 million kilometers away. Europa, Jupiter's ice-covered moon, is actively venting material into space. Right now, as you're watching this, the Hubble Space Telescope captured plumes of water vapor erupting from cracks in Europa's frozen shell, shooting hundreds of kilometers above the surface. This isn't ancient geology. This is happening in real time. And what these eruptions might be bringing up from the ocean below could answer humanity's oldest question: are we alone? This is confirmed science. Multiple independent observations verify these plumes. And what makes this discovery extraordinary isn't just that Europa is cracking open. It's what lies beneath those cracks that's rewriting our understanding of where life might exist in our solar system. Before we dive deeper into what's emerging from Europa's hidden ocean, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss when we decode the next impossible discovery from the edge of the solar system. The detection that changed everything happened on December 12, 2012. Lorenz Roth, a researcher at the Southwest Research Institute, was analyzing Hubble Space Telescope data when he noticed something unexpected in Europa's ultraviolet spectrum. The measurements showed hydrogen and oxygen signatures, the components of water, extending far above Europa's surface. Not scattered molecules from ancient impacts, active plumes erupting with enough force to reach 200 kilometers into space. The initial observation seemed almost too convenient. Scientists had theorized for decades that Europa might have geysers, similar to those on Saturn's moon Enceladus, but finding them required catching Europa in the act, a fleeting event that might last only hours. Roth's team had captured exactly that moment. The question was, could this be verified? Or was it an instrumental artifact, a trick of light and data? They went back through the archives. Hubble had been observing Europa for years, accumulating hundreds of hours of spectroscopic data. The team reanalyzed every observation looking for the same ultraviolet signature, and they found it, not once, not twice. In 3 separate observations spanning from 2012 to 2016, Hubble detected the same water vapor plumes erupting from the same region of Europa's surface, the southern hemisphere, near the trailing edge of the moon. The research, published in the Astrophysical Journal in 2016, confirmed what had seemed impossible. Europa's subsurface ocean was directly connected to space through active vents in the ice. This wasn't speculation. This was observed, measured, and verified by one of the most precise instruments humanity has ever deployed. But here's where the discovery becomes truly significant. The location of these plumes isn't random. They emerge from a region of Europa's surface called Puil Crater and its surrounding terrain, an area crisscrossed with massive fractures and ridges called lineae. These features aren't static geological scars. According to data from NASA's Galileo mission, which orbited Jupiter from 1995 to 2003, Europa's ice shell is constantly being stretched and compressed by tidal forces from Jupiter's immense gravity. Every time Europa completes an orbit around Jupiter, the gravitational pull flexes the moon's interior, generating heat through friction. This process, called tidal heating, is powerful enough to keep Europa's subsurface ocean liquid despite the moon's surface temperature hovering around -160 degrees Celsius. The ice shell itself, estimated to be 15 to 25 kilometers thick based on magnetic field data and surface feature analysis, floats atop an ocean that may be 60 to 150 kilometers deep. That's more liquid water than exists in all of Earth's oceans combined. Now you might be wondering, if Europa has an ocean, why are we only now detecting these plumes? The answer lies in the mechanics of how they form. The plumes aren't continuous geysers. They appear to be episodic, linked to Europa's position in its orbit. When Europa is farthest from Jupiter in its slightly elliptical orbit, the tidal stresses create the maximum stretching effect on the ice shell. Cracks open. Pressure from the ocean below forces water upward through these temporary vents. As Europa moves closer to Jupiter again, the tidal compression seals the cracks shut. The plumes vanish. This cycle was confirmed by a 2018 study published in Nature Astronomy. A team led by William Sparks used Hubble's Space Telescope imaging spectrograph to observe Europa during 10 separate transits across Jupiter's face, a configuration that allows for maximum sensitivity to plume detection. They found that plumes appeared most frequently when Europa was at apogee, the point in its orbit farthest from Jupiter. The correlation wasn't perfect. Not every observation at apogee showed plumes, But the pattern was clear. The tidal cycle controls when and where Europa's ocean gains access to space. This is where the implications become staggering. Every time one of these plumes erupts, it's carrying material directly from Europa's subsurface ocean. No drilling required. No need to penetrate kilometers of ice. The ocean is delivering samples to us, launching them hundreds of kilometers above the surface where a spacecraft could fly through and analyze them. What could those samples contain? To answer that, we need to understand what's happening at the bottom of Europa's ocean, where the liquid water meets the rocky seafloor. On Earth, some of the most thriving ecosystems exist in the most unlikely places. Hydrothermal vents on the ocean floor, kilometers beneath the surface, where sunlight never reaches. These vents form where seawater seeps into cracks in the seafloor, gets superheated by volcanic activity, and erupts back into the ocean loaded with minerals and chemicals. Around these vents, entire communities of organisms thrive: bacteria, tube worms, crabs, fish, all living off the chemical energy rather than photosynthesis. The process is called chemosynthesis. Microorganisms convert chemicals like hydrogen sulfide and methane into energy, forming the base of a food chain completely independent of the sun. These ecosystems proved that life doesn't require sunlight. It requires liquid water, chemical energy, and the right elements. That's it. Europa has all three. The tidal heating that keeps its ocean liquid also generates volcanic activity on its rocky seafloor. Or at least, that's what the models predict. A 2021 study published in Geophysical Research Letters used computer simulations to model Europa's interior structure and heat distribution. The research showed that the tidal forces acting on Europa's rocky mantle would generate enough heat to drive hydrothermal circulation, water flowing through the rock, getting heated, and erupting back into the ocean. If those models are correct, Europa's seafloor could host hydrothermal vent systems similar to Earth's. And if that's true, the chemistry might be right for life. But here's the part that's still theoretical. We haven't confirmed hydrothermal vents exist on Europa. We've inferred their likelihood based on what we know about Europa's structure and the physics of tidal heating. The confirmation would require direct measurement, either by landing a probe on Europa's surface and drilling through the ice, or by analyzing the composition of those plumes. That's where the plume detections become revolutionary. In 2019, a team from NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory published research in Nature Astronomy showing that the Galileo spacecraft, during a close flyby of Europa in 1997, passed through what was almost certainly a plume, though no one realized it at the time. The spacecraft's magnetometer detected a localized disturbance in Jupiter's magnetic field near Europa's surface, and the plasma wave instrument recorded unusual density fluctuations. When the team reanalyzed the data using modern plume models, the signature matched perfectly. Galileo had flown directly through a water vapor plume without anyone knowing. That flyby altitude? Just 206 kilometers above Europa's surface. The spacecraft's instruments detected elevated levels of certain particles consistent with water molecules being broken apart by Jupiter's intense radiation. This wasn't just confirmation that plumes existed in 1997. It was evidence that they carried detectable chemical signatures that future missions could analyze. And that brings us to the most exciting part: what scientists are planning to do next. NASA's Europa Clipper mission launched in October 2024 and is currently on its way to Jupiter, scheduled to arrive in April 2030. This isn't a quick flyby mission. Europa Clipper will conduct 49 close flybys of Europa over a 4-year period, with some passes bringing the spacecraft within 25 kilometers of the surface, low enough to fly directly through any active plumes. The spacecraft carries 9 scientific instruments specifically designed to analyze Europa's ice shell, subsurface ocean, and plume composition. The MASSPEX instrument, the mass spectrometer for planetary exploration, can identify the molecular makeup of plume material, detecting everything from simple water molecules to complex organic compounds. The SUDA instrument, the surface dust analyzer, will capture ice grains ejected by the plumes and measure their composition at the atomic level. If those instruments detect organic molecules in Europa's plume material, amino acids, lipids, anything that hints at biological chemistry, it would be the first direct evidence that Europa's ocean contains the building blocks necessary for life. Not proof of life, but proof that the chemistry is there. Now, some of you are probably thinking, even if Europa has the right chemistry, that doesn't mean life actually formed there. And you're absolutely right to be skeptical. Chemistry is necessary. but not sufficient. The question is, how likely is it that life arose in Europa's ocean, given what we know about how life began on Earth? That's where things get genuinely uncertain. On Earth, we know life appeared relatively quickly, within the first billion years after the planet formed, but we don't know how it started. We don't know if it required specific conditions that only Earth possessed, or if life is an inevitable outcome whenever you have liquid water, chemical energy, and sufficient time. Europa has certainly had enough time. Its ocean has likely been stable for billions of years, possibly since the solar system formed 4.6 billion years ago. The competing theories break down like this. One hypothesis suggests that life requires not just chemistry, but a very specific sequence of events, perhaps lightning to create complex molecules, or tidal pools that concentrate chemicals through evaporation. Europa's completely ice-covered ocean might lack those concentrating mechanisms. Another hypothesis argues that life is far more robust and adaptable than we realize, and that any environment with sustained liquid water and chemical gradients will eventually produce self-replicating molecules. We simply don't know which hypothesis is correct. That's why Europa is so important. It's a test case. If we find life there, or even just complex organic chemistry pointing toward life, it suggests the second hypothesis is right, that life is common in the universe. If we find a chemically rich ocean with all the ingredients but no life, that tells us something equally important, that life is rare, even when conditions seem favorable. There's another possibility that makes Europa uniquely valuable for astrobiology: contamination from Earth. Not contamination we caused, contamination nature caused. Every time a large asteroid impacts Earth, it ejects material into space. Some of that material escapes Earth's gravity entirely and ends up wandering the solar system. Computer simulations published in Astrobiology in 2010 calculated that over the past 4 billion years, millions of rocks from Earth have likely impacted Europa. If any of those rocks carried dormant microorganisms, extremophiles capable of surviving the radiation and cold of space, they could have been delivered to Europa's ocean during impacts that punched through the ice shell. This process, called panspermia, raises a fascinating question. If we find life in Europa's ocean, could it actually be descended from Earth life? Could we be investigating our own distant cousins? That question matters because it affects how we interpret any discovery. Finding Earth-like DNA on Europa wouldn't necessarily mean life arose independently twice. It might mean life traveled between worlds. To distinguish between those scenarios, we'd need to analyze the biochemistry in extraordinary detail, looking for subtle differences that accumulated over billions of years of separation. But let's return to what we can confirm right now: the plumes themselves. Since the initial Hubble detections, scientists have been refining their understanding of when and where these eruptions occur. A 2023 study using the James Webb Space Telescope's infrared instruments observed Europa continuously for 12 hours, capturing the Moon at different points in its orbit. The team detected carbon dioxide signatures in specific regions of the surface, exactly where the plumes had been observed previously. Carbon dioxide on Europa's surface is significant because it's denser than water ice and should sink into the subsurface over time. Finding it concentrated in certain areas suggests it's being actively brought up from below, possibly from the ocean itself, where it might be dissolved in the water or trapped in clathrate structures in the ice. If the plumes are carrying carbon dioxide from the ocean, it means the ocean contains carbon-based chemistry, another requirement for life as we know it. Here's what makes all of this so urgent. Europa's ice shell is constantly being resurfaced. Jupiter's intense radiation bombards the Moon's surface, breaking apart molecules and darkening the ice. But beneath that radiation-damaged surface layer, fresh ice keeps emerging through cracks and overturning zones. This means Europa's surface in many regions is geologically young. In some areas, only 40 to 90 million years old based on crater counting studies. That's yesterday in geological terms. If life exists in Europa's ocean and plume eruptions are regularly bringing ocean material to the surface, there might be biosignatures, chemical or even microbial remains, preserved in that young ice. A future lander mission could potentially detect them without drilling at all. NASA and ESA are both studying concepts for Europa lander missions that would follow up on Clipper's findings, using ground-penetrating radar to identify the youngest ice deposits and then analyzing them for organic chemistry. The European Space Agency's JWST mission, Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer, launched in April 2023 and will reach Jupiter in July 2031. While its primary target is Ganymede, JWST will also conduct 2 close flybys of Europa, carrying instruments designed to map the ice shell structure and measure the ocean's salinity and depth using radar sounding. Together with Clipper's data, JWST will provide the most complete picture we've ever had of Europa's ocean and its connection to the surface. Now, there's something we need to address directly because it affects how we interpret all of this data. The difference between what we've observed and what we're inferring. We have directly observed plumes erupting from Europa's surface. That's confirmed. We've measured their composition, water vapor, with traces of other molecules. That's confirmed. We've detected carbon dioxide and salts on Europa's surface in regions consistent with ocean material. Also confirmed. What remains theoretical? The presence of hydrothermal vents on Europa's seafloor, the existence of complex organic chemistry in the ocean, and of course, life itself. Those are leading hypotheses supported by our understanding of physics and chemistry, but they haven't been directly confirmed yet. The distinction matters because when we talk about Europa potentially harboring life, we're making an evidence-based inference, not stating an established fact. But here's why that inference is so compelling. Every new measurement we make of Europa increases the likelihood that its ocean is habitable. The plumes tell us the ocean is active, not stagnant. The carbon dioxide tells us carbon-based chemistry is present. The tidal heating tells us energy is continuously flowing through the system. The estimated ocean volume tells us there's an enormous amount of liquid water. Each piece of evidence independently suggests habitability. Together, they make a powerful case. The philosophical implication is staggering. If life exists in Europa's ocean, it means that within our own solar system, within the reach of spacecraft we can build today, there are 2 independent ecosystems, Earth's surface biosphere and Europa's deep ocean. That would fundamentally change the Drake equation, which estimates the number of civilizations in our galaxy. Currently, one of the most uncertain variables in that equation is the fraction of planets where life actually arises. If we find life on Europa, it suggests that variable isn't rare at all, that life emerges readily wherever conditions permit. And Europa isn't unique. Saturn's moon Enceladus has confirmed geysers erupting from its south pole, analyzed by the Cassini spacecraft, which detected organic molecules, salts, and silica grains consistent with hydrothermal activity. Titan, Saturn's largest moon, has liquid methane lakes and a possible subsurface water ocean. Even distant Pluto shows evidence of a subsurface ocean based on features observed by New Horizons. Our solar system might contain multiple ocean worlds, each potentially capable of supporting life. Think about what that means for the universe. If our solar system alone contains multiple habitable environments, the galaxy, with its 200 to 400 billion stars, must contain an almost incomprehensible number of worlds where life could exist. The question shifts from, is there life out there, to where isn't there life? But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Right now, in early 2026, we're in a waiting period. Europa Clipper is en route. JWST is en route. The data that will answer these questions is still years away. What we have now are tantalizing hints. Plumes erupting from an ice-covered ocean, carrying who knows what from depths we've never explored. There's something humbling about this moment in human history. We've built machines capable of detecting water molecules erupting from a moon over 500 million kilometers away. We've calculated the tidal forces acting on that moon's interior with enough precision to predict when and where those eruptions might occur. We've designed instruments that can analyze the chemical composition of individual ice grains flying through space at thousands of kilometers per hour. And yet we still don't know if we're alone. Every new discovery seems to push the boundary of possibility. The universe keeps proving itself stranger and more hospitable to life than our models predicted. Europa's plumes are just the latest example, a direct connection between an alien ocean and the space around it, offering us a chance to sample that ocean without ever landing on the surface. What will we find when Europa Clipper flies through those plumes in 2030? Will we detect amino acids, the building blocks of proteins? Will we find phospholipids, the molecules that form cell membranes? Will we discover chemical signatures that have no explanation except biological metabolism? Or will we find a rich chemical environment that's tantalizingly close to life but hasn't quite crossed that threshold? Will Europa teach us that life requires something we haven't identified yet? Some spark or catalyst that Earth possessed but Europa lacks? We don't know. And that's what makes this so exciting. Science works best when it ventures into genuine uncertainty, when the answer could genuinely go either way. Europa represents exactly that kind of frontier, a world that might redefine what we think is possible, or might teach us humility about how rare and precious Earth's biosphere truly is. Here's what we know for certain. Beneath Europa's cracked and tortured ice shell lies an ocean that has remained liquid for billions of years. That ocean is in contact with a rocky seafloor where chemistry can happen. Tidal forces pump energy into that ocean continuously, and periodically that ocean finds pathways to space, launching water and whatever it contains high enough for our instruments to catch it. Whether that water contains life or the chemistry that leads to life, or simply the same sterile molecules found in comets and asteroids, we'll find out soon. The machines we've sent will tell us. The data will come back. And humanity will have an answer to a question we've asked since we first looked up at the night sky and wondered if we're alone. If this expanded your perspective on what's possible in our own cosmic neighborhood, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to follow along as we investigate the solar system's most profound mysteries, because every ocean we discover leads to deeper questions about life's place in the universe. And drop a comment with your prediction. Will Europa Clipper find signs of life, or will it reveal a lifeless ocean that teaches us something equally important about how rare we might be? This is Atlas Interstellar, where we're mapping the possible, one ocean world at a time.